Welcome back now for the news in detail. We start from Afghanistan, where 30 civilians have been killed in an airstrike near Nangarhar province by the Afghan security forces, backed by U.S. air support. Provincial Council member Sohrab Kaderi says 40 others were wounded in the raid. He says the attack was aimed at destroying an ISIS sanctuary, but instead hit farmers near a field. The Defense Ministry in Kabul has confirmed the strike, but refused to share casualty details immediately. Earlier today, 20 people were killed in a Taliban suicide attack in southern Zabul province. Zabul's provincial governor told the media the bomb targeted the Afghan intelligence agency office in the city of Kalat. The blast wounded 95 others and damaged a number of office buildings and houses in the vicinity. Meanwhile, Special Envoy to Afghanistan Zalmay Khalilzad will testify before U.S. House of Representatives Foreign Affairs Committee today. The committee issued a subpoena to force an explanation from Khalilzad over cancellation of Afghanistan peace process. The committee chairman Elliot Angel said lawmakers will hear from the envoy in a classified briefing. Angel said he is glad the committee will have this long overdue opportunity to press for answers on the peace plan. Committee will also hold a public hearing on Trump administration's Afghanistan policy with Assistant Secretary for South Asia Alice Wells. Trump called peace talks after Khalilzad said he has reached an agreement in Afghanistan. In a related development, a U.S. watchdog has warned against a rushed peace deal that could leave millions vulnerable to recruitment by terror groups. In a report, Sigar said any effort to reach an agreement between Kabul and the Taliban must include a plan to reintegrate fighters into civilian life. The U.S. Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction said, for lasting peace, state-aligned, non-state and illegal armed groups must be demobilized. Inspector General John Subko said, not including those groups could deter the Taliban from demobilizing and reintegrating. Talks between the U.S. and Taliban were stopped earlier this month when Donald Trump cancelled secret meetings after a U.S. serviceman was killed in Kabul. Moving on, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan is visiting Saudi Arabia today to discuss the worsening situation in Indian-occupied Kashmir. The Foreign Office said the Premier will meet Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman during his two-day visit. Foreign Office spokesperson Dr. Mohammed Faisal said Khan has been in regular contact with the Saudi Crown Prince on the Kashmir issue. He said the two leaders will also discuss ways of further strengthening the economic partnership between the countries. Faisal said Khan will leave for New York to attend the 74th session of United Nations General Assembly after the visit. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called on India to respect human rights in occupied Kashmir. He told a media briefing he would continue to advocate a peaceful settlement for the disputed territory. New Delhi's crushing curfew and total communications blackout in occupied Kashmir has now entered its 46th day. Meanwhile, the Indian forces did not allow separatist leader Sayyid Ali Gilani to hold a press conference at his residence in Srinagar. Local and international media was stopped and forced to leave by Indian occupation forces. India has repeatedly ignored calls by the UN Secretary General calling India to stop denying basic human rights to Kashmiris.
I go on with a clear opinion that human rights must be fully respected in the territory, and I go on with a clear opinion that dialogue between India and Pakistan is an absolutely essential element for the solution of the problem.
In India, opposition leader Rahul Gandhi has mocked Prime Minister Narendra Modi over the downfall of the country's economy. Referring to Modi's US speech Gandhi taunted him for the pomp and show, while India's economy worsens under the BJP government. Gandhi was pointing to economy's record slowdown, which has brought country's GDP to 5%, the lowest in 6 years. This slowdown has hit the auto industry hardest, as over 350,000 have lost their jobs since the start of the year. Automotive Components Manufacturers Association of India head says the number can go to 1 million if this downturn continues. Moving on to the United States, who has called the attacks to Saudi Arabia's oil installations an act of war by Iran. Talking to the media in Riyadh, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Tehran has put the global energy supply at risk. Speaking to reporters on his three-day visit to the kingdom, Pompeo said an attack of such scale is unprecedented. His remarks came as Saudi Arabia displayed missile and drone wreckage. Earlier, the Saudi military spokesman said the recovered weapons wreckage provided undeniable evidence of Iranian involvement. Responding, Iran has denied involvement in the attack and warned to retaliate to any U.S. act of military aggression. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned against the consequences of the crisis spinning out of control. UN experts will arrive in Saudi Arabia to lead an international investigation into the attack. War of words between the US and Iran continues. Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said the United States has escalated economic war on Iranian civilians by levying more sanctions. Zarif said US President Donald Trump is deliberately targeting ordinary Iranians. In a tweet, the foreign minister called Washington's economic terrorism illegal and inhumane and asked to stop it. The Trump administration imposed new sanctions after blaming Tehran for attack on Saudi oil facilities on Saturday. The White House has not yet revealed the details of new sanctions. Moving on to the Middle East now, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas said he would be against a new Israeli government led by Benjamin Netanyahu if he wins the election. President Abbas is on a visit to Norway to express gratitude for Oslo's continuous support to the Palestinian people. These remarks come after Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki said they are ready to hold talks with any future Israeli leader. Al-Maliki said the Palestinian Authority believes in the implementation of the two-state solution for peace. Elections in Israel left a deadlock between Netanyahu and his rival Benny Gantz. The Ranawajin has raised prospects of a unity government in Tel Aviv. Now, Germany has hosted a meeting ahead of the upcoming international conference on Libya, slated for November. The meeting was attended by representatives from countries including the US, Russia and the UAE. After the event, Russia's foreign ministry, the group exchanged proposals to resolve the Libyan crisis as soon as possible. Partners pledged to reach a political settlement because the United Nations support mission in Libya has proven ineffective. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said efforts should focus on de-escalation and avoiding a proxy war in Libya. Meanwhile, Khalifa Haftar's forces have hit Mitigaro airport 4 times over the past 24 hours, forcing it to close. South Korea says military tensions with North Korea have declined significantly over implementation of their summit agreements last year. Unification Minister Kim Jong-chul made the remarks during an event to mark the first anniversary of the third Inter-Korean Summit in Pyongyang. Kim said military tensions on the Korean peninsula have decreased significantly because of concrete implementations of agreements. He said hostile acts on all levels have stopped and the chances of clashes between the South and the North have plummeted. Kim also highlighted the opening of hiking trails near the border to the public. Sri Lanka's Election Commission has announced the country's next presidential elections will be held on November 16th. The Commission's chairman Mahinda Deshapriya said the deadline for election nominations is October 7th. The Commission officials say there are a record 18 candidates contesting this year's race. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe's centre-right United National Party has yet to nominate a candidate. The main opposition party, Sri Lanka Podujana Paramuna, has already nominated wartime defence chief Gotabaya Rajapaksa. The election is being held as the country's economy struggles to recover from a political crisis and aftermath of the Easter bombings. Moving on, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has apologized for wearing brown face makeup to a costume party in 2001. Addressing the image, Trudeau said he deeply regrets his actions and should have known better. The nearly 2-decade-old picture shows Trudeau with skin-darkening makeup on his face and hands. With the elections a month away, Trudeau has been grilled by opposition, calling him unfit to govern. Trudeau has regrets and the incident and has already apologized for it.
In 2001, when I was a teacher out in Vancouver, I attended an end-of-year gala where the theme was Arabian Nights. And I dressed up in an Aladdin costume and put makeup on. I shouldn't have done that. I should have known better, but I didn't. And I'm really sorry.
Finland's Prime Minister Antti Rinne says the UK's Boris Johnson has 12 days to set his Brexit plans to the EU. Finland currently holds the European Union's rotating presidency. Rinne says he and French President Emmanuel Macron agree if the United Kingdom could not produce the proposals before October, then it's over. Johnson's office says Britain will continue negotiating and formalise its proposals at the appropriate time. EU Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker has also said time is running out for Britain to secure a divorce deal. Meanwhile, Poland's ambassador to the United Kingdom has urged his compatriots to seriously consider returning home after Brexit. The UK Supreme Court is hearing the final arguments to decide if Prime Minister Boris Johnson acted unlawfully by suspending Parliament. Lawyers representing the semi-autonomous governments of Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales will present their arguments today. Johnson suspended Parliament after MPs passed legislation to block the prospect of a no-deal Brexit. If the court rules against the Premier, he may be compelled to recall Parliament earlier than scheduled. Coming up next in the Bulletin after a short break. Germany's communist-era apartments are being transformed. Central Park Tower has been unveiled in New York. Welcome back now. France and Italy have agreed on a new system of fairly distributing migrants across the European Union. The development arises ahead of an interior ministers' meeting in Malta next week. French President Emmanuel Macron and Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte have agreed to take in migrants safe from the Mediterranean. The two countries have sought to patch up bruised bilateral relations. President Macron says the European Union has not shown enough solidarity with countries handling first arrivals of the migrants. He said the conflict cannot be solved at the expense of human lives. Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte said migration issue must be seen out of anti-European propaganda. Mexico has called a French auction house to stop the sale of 120 pre-Columbian art pieces. The relics are being offered by the Million Auction House in Paris. More in this report.
The Mexican Foreign Ministry says some artifacts appear to have been stolen or illegally sold, while others may not be authentic. Mexico passed a law in 1972 prohibiting the export of such artifacts. Mexican ambassador to France Juan Manuel Gómez Robledo said the auction violates international law.
Mexico is the rightful owner of these artworks, and we have come here to express our unhappiness and to explain why this violates not only Mexican law but also international law.
The collection includes sculptures, masks and religious artifacts. A French couple, Manichac and Jean Orance, started the collection in the 1960s. Auction house president Alejandro Milon says the French couple fulfilled all the criteria to justify their ownership of the collection.
The question is a very simple one. Am I a French person who owns art, comes from outside the West, and is my ownership under threat? Clearly, that's what's at stake today.
The tensions over the pre-Columbian art pieces come amid a wider discussion. It revolves around whether Western collectors and museums should return objects to their countries of origin. Collectors and museums often argue that the antique artifacts lack adequate care.
Some of Eastern Germany's communist-era concrete apartments blocks are being transformed into a giant art project. When the refurbishment began in 2018, the idea was to create something original the residents can identify with. See how they got along in this report.
A reminder of the communist era, the vast concrete Plattenbau tower blocks surrounding cities in eastern Germany are usually thought of as eyesores. A new urban culture project in the city of Halle hopes to promote social cohesion by turning architectural sins into monumental masterpieces. The grey Plattenbau blocks are made of prefabricated concrete slabs. They are often associated with poverty and tension. Artists aim to paint these buildings with bright colors and transform them into artworks to give the apartment blocks a look of life rather than squalor.
We have specific themes, as you can see on the buildings. There is a common thread that guides us through all the stories we can see here. In principle, the message is that nothing lasts, everything changes.
The often disdained Plattenbau complex overlooks the prestigious Franke Foundation, an educational institution dating back to the 17th century. Under the communist regime, the modern apartments were prized among high-profile party officials who called them bigwig blocks.
In the places where we paint, people generally don't have good social interactions with each other. When they look at our walls, even if they argue about it or don't like it, it is a good opportunity for people to approach each other and talk about the art.
The housing association responsible for the blocks will spend €7 million on the project to cover 8,000 square meters of wall space on 4 buildings.
The world's tallest residential building, Central Park Tower, has been unveiled in New York. Developers and architects held a ceremony to celebrate the building in Manhattan's Midtown. Watch this report for more.
The developers say the super tall residential tower is expected to open next year in New York City. Extel Development Company President Gary Barnett says the $3 billion Central Park Tower is entering an oversupplied market.
It took a long time, little by little, and as we got larger footprint, larger air rights, it turned into what's now the tallest residential building in the world. It's not something that was easy to accomplish.
The building stands at 1,550 feet tall, boasting 179 luxury units. Prices start at $6.9 million for a 33rd floor, 2-bedroom apartment. The amenities include swimming pools, a spa, a theatre, a cigar bar, and a ballroom for 126 people. Architects Adrian Smith and Gordon Gill say they were thrilled to contribute to the New York skyline.
We're in one of the greatest cities in the world, so the inspiration is easy. When you look at the history and legacy of great buildings in New York, and you look at the skyline of New York, for us to be able to participate in that and kind of etch our role in the history of that architectural legacy is fantastic.
Residents will live above a 300,000 square foot department store, taking up the first 7 floors. Central Park Tower is scheduled for completion next year.
Now, due to India's crushing lockdown of occupied Kashmir is forcing the valley's apple crop to rot in orchards. Apples are the most popular produce and the largest crop of the occupied valley. Farmers and traders say the total clampdown has cut transport links with buyers abroad, plunging the industry into turmoil. Apples are lifeblood of occupied valley's economy, involving 3.5 million people, which are around half of the population of the state. The traders said the continuing lack of internet and mobile connections has paralyzed their businesses. Amnesty International has already reported the curfew is causing humanitarian crisis, shortage of food and lack of health facilities. Chinese smartphone giant Huawei is launching its latest high-end smartphone, the Mate 30, in Munich today. It is the first time the company will reveal its response to US sanctions. Huawei has kept a veil of secrecy over its plans to overcome the barriers imposed by the US. The Chinese telecoms giant will showcase its Mate 30 range, which includes the latest 5G technology. The smartphone maker is caught in the fallout of a trade war between the United States and China. US President Donald Trump added Huawei to a blacklist, barring it from exports in May. Hurricane Humberto has grown to Category 3 strength as its winds and rain shake Bermuda. Electrical company Belco says the storm knocked out power for nearly 16,000 homes. The island is already reeling from devastation caused by Hurricane Dorian earlier this month. The National Hurricane Center says coastal flooding from the storm's surge and high-speed breaking waves are expected in the region. Winds are extending outwards up to 145 kilometers from the center. Bermudian officials have warned residents to stay indoors and prepare for possible tornadoes. And now let's have a look at the weather updates around the world. This is the end of the bulletin. For more news and updates, keep watching Indus News.